The warning the Zelkron Empire had ruled the western spiral arm of the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Their dominion stretched across 400 star systems, encompassing nearly 1,000 habitable worlds. Every species they encountered either joined willingly or was absorbed by force. The Empire knew only one direction: expansion. Empress Valara sat upon her crystalline throne in the heart of the Imperial Palace on Zelkros Prime. Her silver skin shimmered under the light of the chamber's luminescent columns. Before her stood Grand Admiral Corvin, commander of the Imperial fleet. He carried a data tablet containing the latest survey reports from the frontier territories. The Admiral activated a holographic display above the tablet. A star map materialized in the air between them, showing unexplored regions beyond the Empire's current borders. One cluster of systems glowed with a distinct amber color, indicating recent discovery. "Your Majesty," Corvin began, his voice carrying the confidence of a warrior who had never known defeat. "Our scout vessels have identified a new civilization in Sector 447. They call themselves humans. They occupy one central system and have established colonies on 17 nearby worlds." Valara leaned forward with interest. New civilizations meant new resources, new technologies to absorb, and new populations to bring under Imperial control. The Empire's strength came from its diversity, from taking the best that each conquered species had to offer. "What is their technological level?" she asked. Corvin gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on the human territory. "Preliminary scans indicate they possess fusion-based energy generation, basic artificial intelligence, and conventional space travel capability. Nothing that poses a threat to Imperial forces. Our analysts estimate their civilization is approximately 300 years behind ours in overall development." The Empress smiled. Another easy acquisition. The pattern had repeated itself hundreds of times throughout Imperial history. Discover a primitive species, offer them the choice to join peacefully, and when they inevitably refused or made unreasonable demands, demonstrate the Empire's power until they understood their position. "Deploy the first armada," Valara commanded. "Offer them the standard terms. They may join the Empire as a client species with limited autonomy, or we will annex their territory by force. Give them 72 hours to decide." Corvin bowed deeply. "It shall be done, Your Majesty." The first armada consisted of 8,000 warships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts capable of reducing continents to ash, to swift destroyers that could intercept any vessel attempting to flee. It was overwhelming force by design. Most species surrendered the moment they saw such power arrayed against them. Commander Thrace, a veteran officer with scales the color of burnished copper, received command of the operation. He had overseen 17 successful annexations in his career. Not one had required significant combat. The sight of the armada was usually enough to convince any reasonable leadership that resistance was futile. The fleet departed from Imperial space and made the 3-week journey to human territory. Thrace spent the travel time reviewing everything known about humans. They were bipedal mammals, relatively fragile compared to most spacefaring species. They required specific atmospheric conditions and were vulnerable to temperature extremes. Their worlds were rich in water and organic compounds, valuable resources for the Empire. Nothing in the reports suggested they would be difficult to manage once absorbed into Imperial society. Some species fought bitterly before accepting their fate. Thrace hoped the humans would be sensible. The armada arrived at the border of human space exactly on schedule. Thrace ordered the fleet into standard intimidation formation, a wall of warships stretching across millions of kilometers. Visible to any sensor array the humans might have pointed in their direction, he composed the formal annexation message that the Empire had used for centuries. It outlined the benefits of joining the Empire: protection from external threats, access to advanced technology, participation in galactic trade networks. It also made clear the alternative: military occupation and forced integration. Before Thrace could transmit the message, his communications officer reported an incoming signal from the humans. That was unusual. Most species waited for the Empire to make first contact, too intimidated to initiate communication themselves. "Put it through," Thrace ordered. A human appeared on the main view screen. He was a middle-aged male, wearing a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. His hair had turned silver, and his dark eyes studied Thrace with calm assessment. The nameplate on his uniform read, "Ambassador Chun, Terran Diplomatic Corps." "I am Ambassador Michael Chun, representing the United Terran Government," the human said. His voice was steady and professional, showing neither fear nor hostility. "We have been monitoring your fleet's approach to our territory. Before you proceed further, I wish to establish formal first contact under the protocols of interstellar law." Thrace felt surprised by the human's composure. Most species showed at least some nervousness when facing an Imperial fleet. Chun appeared as relaxed as if he were discussing weather patterns. "I am Commander Thrace of the Zelkran Imperial First Armada," he replied. "We are here to extend an offer to your species. The Zelkran Empire invites humanity to join our civilization. You will retain some autonomy over your internal affairs while benefiting from Imperial protection and technology." Chun nodded slowly. "I appreciate the offer, Commander. However, the Terran government must decline. We value our independence and have no wish to be absorbed into your empire. We hope this will not damage the possibility of establishing peaceful diplomatic and trade relations between our peoples as equals." Several officers on Thrace's bridge exchanged glances. Equals? The human actually used that word. Thrace kept his expression neutral. "I understand your initial reaction, Ambassador. However, I encourage you to consider carefully. The Empire's offer is generous. The alternative is that we will annex your territory by force. Your civilization will be occupied, and you will lose any opportunity for autonomy." "Commander Thrace," Chun said, and something shifted in his tone. The friendliness remained, but underneath it lay something harder. "I need you to understand our position clearly. The border of Terran space is not negotiable. Your fleet is currently positioned 7 light hours from that border. If your vessels cross into our territory, we will interpret it as an act of war." Thrace allowed himself a slight smile. "Ambassador, surely you understand the situation. My fleet consists of 8,000 warships. From our scans, your entire military cannot field more than a few hundred vessels. I do not wish to see your people harmed, but if you force us to demonstrate the Empire's power, we will do so." Chun's expression did not change. "Commander, I am going to share something with you that I hope will prevent unnecessary bloodshed. 50 years ago, humanity detected signs of multiple advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We realized that first contact was inevitable. Some nations on Earth advocated for continued isolation. Others pushed for immediate outreach to establish friendly relations." The ambassador paused, choosing his words carefully. "Our governments compromised. We would not seek contact with other species, but we would prepare for the day when they found us. For 5 decades, every resource we could spare has gone into a single purpose, ensuring that when we were discovered, we would be strong enough that no one could threaten our freedom." Thrace felt the first hint of unease. There was something in Chun's eyes now, a certainty that suggested this was not bluster. "Commander Thrace, please believe me when I say that humanity does not want conflict. We would much rather establish peaceful relations with the Zelkran Empire. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. All of this is possible if you respect our sovereignty. But if you cross our border with hostile intent, your fleet will be destroyed. Not damaged, not forced to retreat, destroyed. The word hung in the air between them. Thrace had heard similar threats before, from species that had no idea what they were facing. But something about the way Chun delivered the warning made it different. The human was not angry or afraid. He was simply stating what he believed to be a fact. You have 72 hours to withdraw your fleet beyond the 10 light-hour mark from our border, Chen continued. If you do so, we will consider this encounter a misunderstanding and work toward establishing diplomatic relations. If you advance, you will be fired upon without further warning. The choice is yours, Commander. The transmission ended before Thrace could respond. He stared at the blank screen for a moment, processing what had just occurred. Around him, his officers began talking among themselves. Some laughed at the human's audacity. Others seemed troubled by Chun's confidence. Thrace pulled up the tactical analysis of human space. Their colonies were lightly defended, according to Imperial scans. Their fleet was modest. Everything suggested this was an empty threat from a species that did not yet understand how outmatched they were. And yet, Chun's warning echoed in his mind. 50 years of preparation. Every resource devoted to defense. What could a species accomplish with that level of focus? He composed his report to Empress Velara, including a full recording of the conversation with Ambassador Chun. Within hours, he received her response. The message was brief and absolute. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. Proceed with annexation. Demonstrate to these humans what happens to species that refuse our generous offer. Thrace acknowledged the order. Around him, the First Armada prepared for combat operations. Weapons systems powered up. Shields reached maximum strength. Troop carriers readied their soldiers for planetary assault operations. The commander opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Commander Thrace. In 72 hours, we will cross into human territory and begin annexation procedures. The humans have refused the Empire's offer and have made threats they cannot possibly back up. We will show them the error of their judgment. Remain alert, but do not expect significant resistance. This will be over quickly. Deep in human space, far beyond the range of Zelkron sensors. Ambassador Chun stood in the Central Command facility buried beneath the mountains of Colorado. The chamber was vast, filled with hundreds of officers monitoring every aspect of Terran defensive readiness. General Sarah Martinez approached him. Her uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Force, and her face showed the stress of carrying enormous responsibility. They refused the warning, she said. It was not a question. They did, Chun confirmed. I gave them every opportunity to back down peacefully. I was as clear as I could be without revealing our capabilities. They chose to interpret our warning as primitive bravado. Martinez pulled up a holographic display showing the Zelkron First Armada. 8,000 ships, each one representing thousands of lives. The general had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, but that did not make it easier. All defense grids are active, she reported. The perimeter fleet is in position. Stealth units have been deployed. We are ready. Chun nodded slowly. He had negotiated trade agreements, resolved disputes between colonies, and represented humanity in dozens of delicate situations. But he had never had to deliver a warning like the one he had just given. He had meant every word. 72 hours, he said quietly. Let's hope they come to their senses before the deadline expires. Because if they cross that border, God help them. They have no idea what we've built out here. Martinez looked at the display showing human defensive installations. Weapons platforms that could crack moons. Fleets equipped with technology that made conventional warfare obsolete. Defense networks that had consumed the wealth of 17 colony worlds to construct. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. They had studied every possible threat, every potential enemy. They had built defenses that would make any invasion so costly that no rational aggressor would attempt it. The Zelkron Empire was about to discover that humanity's warning was not empty bravado. It was a promise. And humanity always kept its promises. The countdown began. 72 hours until the Zelkron First Armada would make a decision that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Asterisk. The demonstration. The 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness aboard the command ship of the Zelkron First Armada. Commander Thrace spent the time reviewing tactical scenarios and deployment patterns. His officers prepared targeting solutions for the human colonies. The troops readied their equipment for planetary operations. Everything proceeded according to standard Imperial protocol. No message arrived from the humans. No desperate plea for more time. No offer to reconsider their position. Only silence from across the border. Thrace found that silence more unsettling than any threat could have been. When the deadline expired, Thrace gave the order. The First Armada advanced in perfect formation toward the boundary of Terran space. 8,000 warships moving as one, their combined mass equivalent to a small moon. The sight had broken the will of countless civilizations before battle, was even joined. The fleet crossed the border that Ambassador Chun had drawn. Sensor arrays swept the space ahead, searching for the promised human resistance. The displays showed empty void. No defensive platforms. No waiting fleet. Nothing but the distant stars and the faint energy signatures of human colonies deeper in their territory. Tactical analysis, Thrace ordered. His sensor officers studied the readings carefully. Sir, I am detecting no military assets within range. The nearest human vessels are civilian transports near their third colony world. They appear to be evacuating the population. Thrace felt a mix of relief and disappointment. The humans had been bluffing after all. They were running rather than fighting. It was the sensible choice. But part of him had been curious to see what they thought they could accomplish against Imperial might. Maintain formation and proceed toward the primary colony world, he commanded. Prepare to deploy occupation forces upon arrival. Communications. Broadcast a message to all human settlements. Inform them that resistance has proven futile and that the Empire is now assuming control of their territory. All civilian populations should remain calm and await further instructions. The fleet advanced deeper into human space. Hours passed without incident. Thrace began composing his victory report to Empress Velara. Another successful annexation. Another species brought into the Imperial fold. His record remained unblemished. Then the sensors registered something new. Energy signatures appearing throughout the Armada's formation. Not weapons fire. Something else. The readings were unlike anything in the Imperial database. Sir, I am detecting spatial anomalies forming around our vessels, the sensor officer reported. His voice carried confusion rather than alarm. They are not hostile. They appear to be some kind of scanning field. Thrace studied the data. Hundreds of small energy signatures had materialized around his fleet. They were not attacking. They were simply present, distributed evenly throughout the formation. The computers analyzed the signatures and provided an assessment. Advanced sensor technology, far beyond Imperial capability. Before Thrace could process this information, a new transmission arrived. Ambassador Chun appeared on the view screen once more. Behind him, Thrace could see what appeared to be a military command center, with dozens of officers working at various stations. Commander Thrace, Chun said. His voice carried the same calm professionalism as before, but now there was also sadness in his eyes. You were warned. You chose to ignore that warning. What happens next is on you and your Empress. Ambassador, your threats were empty, Thrace replied, trying to sound confident. We have encountered no resistance. Your fleet has run. Your colonies are defenseless. Accept the inevitable and order your people to cooperate with Imperial occupation forces. Chun shook his head slowly. Commander, those energy signatures your sensors detected? Those are target locks. Every ship in your fleet is currently being tracked by multiple Terran weapon systems. You crossed our border with hostile intent. You are now in our territory, surrounded by our defenses, and completely at our mercy. Thrace felt his confidence waver. The human certainty was unshakable. Impossible. We see no weapon platforms. No fleet. You are bluffing to buy time. I am going to demonstrate something for you, Chun said. Your fleet contains 8,000 ships. I'm going to disable exactly 100 of them. Not destroy. Disable. This will serve as proof that our capabilities are real. After this demonstration, I will give you one final chance to withdraw peacefully. The transmission ended. Thrace immediately ordered his fleet to battle stations. Shields went to maximum power. Weapons systems armed and began searching for targets. Around him, his officers worked frantically to identify the source of the threat. Sir, I am still detecting no hostile vessels or platforms, the sensor officer insisted. There is nothing out there to fire at us. Then space itself seemed to shimmer. The energy signatures that had been passively scanning the fleet suddenly intensified, and 100 Zelkron warships simply stopped functioning. Their engines died. Their shields collapsed. Their weapons powered down. The vessels went dark and began drifting, momentum carrying them forward on their previous trajectories. Thrace stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 100 ships scattered throughout his formation, all disabled in the same instant. His communications officer reported that the affected vessels were still intact. Their crews were alive, but every system had experienced simultaneous failure. What kind of weapon does that? Thrace demanded. Energy-based attacks leave signatures. Kinetic impacts cause physical damage. This is neither. How did they do this? General Martinez stood beside Ambassador Chun in the Terran Command Center, watching the Zelkron fleet's reaction on the main display. Targeted electromagnetic pulse, she explained to the assembled officers. We've been developing it for 30 years. It generates a precise field that overloads electronic systems without harming organic tissue. Range is limited, but when you can get close enough without being detected, it is devastatingly effective. And how did we get close enough? Asked Colonel Park, commander of the perimeter fleet. The energy signatures they detected were not just sensor locks, Martinez replied with a slight smile. They were our drone network. Each drone is about the size of a basketball. Their hulls are composed of metamaterials that bend sensor waves around them. The Zelkron detected the energy we wanted them to detect, but they never saw the drones themselves. We positioned 10,000 of them throughout their formation while they were crossing the border. Ambassador Chun opened a channel to Commander Thrace once more. The Zelkron officer's face now showed genuine fear. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by the realization that he was facing something beyond his understanding. Commander, you have just witnessed a limited demonstration of Terran defensive capability, Chun said. I disabled 100 of your ships. I could have disabled all 8,000. I could have done far worse. But humanity does not wish to take lives unnecessarily. We want you to understand that your invasion cannot succeed. Thrace found his voice. What do you want? I want you to turn your fleet around and leave our territory. Chun replied simply. Take your disabled ships in tow. Return to your empire. Tell your empress that the Terran government is willing to establish diplomatic relations on terms of mutual respect. We will exchange ambassadors. We will negotiate trade agreements. We will work together as equals. But we will never be conquered. The Zelkron commander looked at his tactical display. 7,900 functional ships remained under his command. The humans had demonstrated they could disable his vessels without destroying them. That suggested restraint, but it also suggested they possessed weapons powerful enough to destroy the fleet if they chose to use them. Every instinct told him to order his ships to open fire. The Empire did not retreat. The Empire did not negotiate with species they intended to conquer. But those instincts had been formed through centuries of facing inferior opponents. What happened when you faced someone who was not inferior? I need to consult with Empress Velara, Thrace said finally. You have 1 hour, Chun responded. After that, if your fleet has not begun withdrawing, we will interpret your continued presence as continued hostile intent, and we will respond accordingly. The transmission ended. Thrace immediately composed an urgent message to the Imperial capital. He included all sensor data from the engagement, tactical analysis of the human capabilities, and his recommendation that the Empire reconsider its approach to this species. He stressed that the humans had shown restraint when they could have destroyed his entire fleet. The response from Empress Velara came back within 40 minutes. Thrace read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Empress dismissed his concerns as cowardice. She ordered him to destroy the human colonies immediately. She informed him that the 2nd and 3rd Armadas were being mobilized and would arrive as reinforcements within 2 weeks. The humans would be crushed, and Thrace would be demoted for his failure to complete a simple annexation. Thrace looked around his bridge. His officers waited for orders. These were good people who had served the Empire faithfully. They trusted him to lead them to victory. But what was victory in this situation? Following orders that would lead to their deaths? Or disobeying the Empress and facing execution for treason? He thought about Ambassador Chun's words. Mutual respect equals concepts the Empire had never embraced. Perhaps that was the Empire's fatal flaw. Open a channel to the human ambassador. Thrace ordered. Chun appeared on the screen moments later. Behind him, Terran officers watched intently. They knew the decision Thrace was facing. They had seen the Zelkron commander's message to his Empress and had intercepted her response. Human signals intelligence was far more advanced than the Empire suspected. Ambassador Chun, Thrace began, I have received orders from my Empress to continue the invasion, to destroy your colonies and wait for reinforcements. But I am not going to follow those orders. Chun's expression softened slightly. Go on. I am a military officer. I have spent my life serving the Empire. But I am also responsible for the lives of the crews under my command. You have demonstrated that you can disable our ships at will. Logic suggests you can destroy them just as easily. I will not sacrifice 8,000 ships and millions of lives for Imperial pride. Thrace straightened in his command chair. I am ordering my fleet to withdraw beyond your border. We will take our disabled vessels with us. I will report to the Empress that human defenses are far more advanced than our intelligence suggested, and that further military action would be catastrophic for the Empire. That decision takes courage, Commander, Chun said. What will happen to you when you return? I will likely be executed for disobeying orders, Thrace replied calmly. But at least the crews of these ships will survive. That is worth the price. Chun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried genuine respect. Commander Thrace, the Terran government would like to offer you and any of your officers who share your views political asylum. We have no desire to see honorable people punished for choosing peace over senseless war. Thrace had not expected that. Asylum. A chance to live, even if it meant never seeing his homeworld again. Around him, several officers looked up with hope in their eyes. I will consider your offer, Ambassador, Thrace said. For now, my fleet is withdrawing. I hope that wiser minds in the Empire will prevail, and that our peoples can find a path to peaceful coexistence. The first armada turned and began the long journey back toward Imperial space. 117 ships, their systems still disabled, were taken under tow by other vessels. The formation that had entered human territory with such confidence now limped away in defeat. Not because they had been destroyed, but because their commander had chosen wisdom over pride. In the Terran Command Center, General Martinez watched the Zelkron fleet withdraw. "They will send more," she said quietly. "The Empress will not accept this defeat." "I know," Chun replied, "but we bought ourselves time, and we demonstrated our capabilities without having to kill anyone. That matters. What about Commander Thrace? Do you think he will accept asylum?" Chun studied the retreating fleet on the display. "I think he might. And if he does, he will be able to tell us everything we need to know about the Zelkron Empire. Their military structure, their technology, their political weaknesses. Information that might help us find a peaceful solution before more fleets arrive." 3 days later, a small shuttle detached from the Zelkron fleet and approached the Terran border. Aboard were Commander Thrace and 47 officers who had chosen exile over returning to face the Empress's wrath. They carried with them detailed intelligence about the Empire, offered freely as a gesture of good faith. Ambassador Chun met them personally at the border station. As Thrace stepped off the shuttle, he looked at the human who had given him a chance to choose honor over blind obedience. "Thank you," Thrace said simply. "Thank you for choosing life over death," Chun replied. "Welcome to Terran Space, Commander. We have much to discuss." Far away, on Zelkros Prime, Empress Valara received Commander Thrace's final report. She read it with growing fury. The human defenses were more advanced than predicted. The first armada had been humiliated. Thrace himself had defected to the enemy. This was more than a military setback. This was a direct challenge to Imperial authority. She convened an emergency session of the Imperial War Council. The second and third armadas would be joined by the fourth and fifth. 30,000 ships would be sent to crush humanity once and for all. The Empire would demonstrate what happened to species that dared to resist. But as the Council made its plans, a small doubt crept into Valara's mind. The humans had disabled 100 ships instantly. They had done so without revealing their weapon platforms or fleet positions. They had shown restraint when they could have destroyed the first armada completely. What kind of species possessed such power, but chose not to use it? Perhaps, she thought, humanity was more dangerous than she had realized. Perhaps they were not primitives with empty threats. Perhaps they were something the Empire had never encountered before. A species that was both powerful enough to destroy their enemies and wise enough to seek peace instead. The thought troubled her more than she wanted to admit. But pride and the weight of imperial tradition pushed such doubts aside. The Empire would show humanity the price of defiance. The galaxy would learn that the Zelkron Empire did not negotiate with inferiors, even if those inferiors had shown themselves to be far from primitive. The second wave was coming, and this time there would be no warnings, no demonstrations, and no mercy. Or so the Empress believed. What she did not yet understand was that humanity had prepared for exactly this response. The demonstration with the first armada had been a test, a carefully measured display of capability designed to gauge imperial pride against imperial wisdom. The Empire had failed that test. Now humanity would have to show them the full extent of what 5 decades of preparation had created. And when that revelation came, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift forever. Asterisk.